Hello everyone. We're going to take a look at this new design that is out now called HEX. So the idea is based around this hexagon shape, the glowing with the fog and the smoke, for that neon-y type of look. Really cool new trend that's going around, so I wanted to create a digital version to make it a little bit easier for those who can't or don't want to manage the physical version of this. So I wanted to take a look at the layers here, give you a walkthrough of what to expect in here, what some of the options are, and yeah, so you have a good idea when you go into this of how to use everything. Should be fairly simple and fairly straightforward, but let's take a look at what we've got. So when this file opens, it's going to start at the very top with our color grading layers, which is typical for my designs. So again, these can be turned on or off. They are going to add a little bit of color and contrast to make those images pop just a little bit more. But that's in a folder, so you could expand that folder. There's two different color grading layers. They could be turned off or on individually. You could change opacities on those. You can see like this one's already preset at 30%, but you can play with these opacities and things to create the looks that you want. If you want a little bit less or more, turn those up and down. Below that, we have some facial highlight boosts. Again, if you've used many of my designs, you should be very familiar with those by now, but we'll take a look at those more closely in just a minute. As we go on down, we have some normal text layer on this one right here. It's just, I have it set as the year at the bottom, but that could be anything. So that's just normal text. You could just double click on that, type your new year in, and easy as that. Alright, so if we go on down, we've got some foreground smoke down in the bottom down here to create some atmosphere. Attached to that, you will see the foreground smoke color. So remember always to read the layer names. They'll tell you exactly what those layers do. But if we turn that on, we can add some color to this. This is set up as a hue saturation adjustment layer. So if we look up at our properties window, we can just slide that hue to whatever color we want that to be. Make it more or less saturated here, or change the lightness and brightness of that with the lightness slider. So again, very easy to change that. If you want to set that to a specific color, you could always use your color picker tool, sample say a jersey color, get that hex value and use a tool such as colorpicker.com to plug those values in. And we'll take a look at that, once we drop a subject in. I can show you how to use that in here. But let's keep going down here. So there's a foreground smoke. Now you're going to see four groups here, because there's four kind of designs or layouts of this background options in here. So we can see this is that one hex option here. If we turn that off and there's the two. So that one looks like that sample. Then we have, like, I call it the hex wall. So we have one that's a larger kind of grid pattern here. And then we have one that's a smaller grid pattern. Now you're going to see in each of these groups, if we expand them, there's some layers going on. And in each one of these, that's where you're going to find our red marked layers, which is where our subject goes. So if you wanted to use the smaller wall, you would open that up, drop your subject in this group. If you wanted to use the larger wall, you would open that one up, drop the subject in this group. Same with these as well. These then expand, and you're going to find those layers in there to drop those subjects in. And again, we're going to take a look at that in just a minute, but just so you can see, and we'll look at what's in each of these layers when we drop our subjects in there. Alright, so let's collapse those for now. Below these, you're going to find, if you want to do a full length, there's some floor options in here. So what we're going to do, I'm going to turn the foreground smoke off so we can turn these on. Let's turn that year off too so we can see. That down here, let's start down here and just turn the floor base itself on. So that's just the base floor. Then there's some generalized lighting on the floor here. And then a couple different highlight options. There's a double highlight and a single. And I did that for these walls, basically. So if we turn on the larger wall, you can see how we have these 2 points down here. So I think doing the double highlights visually makes a little bit more sense and looks better. But if we do the smaller wall, where it's more uniform across, I think the single looks better lighting up the whole thing. But you can kind of pick and choose what you want to use there. Now let's turn these off. And we're going to see below that there's a couple of text options down here. So the way that I set these up, one, I just call this text normal. So it's just this first last name just typed out horizontally as normal. The other option is this rotated text. I did this for these, like the grid options here. Like I said, if we take the larger grid, I thought it looked pretty cool myself to rotate those and put those, you know, over in this grid, you know, your subject in the middle to create that type of look. Again, it's just an option in there that I set up as default. Doesn't mean you have to use it that way. Again, the great thing about a template design is you get to move all the pieces around, put them where you want, where you think they look the best. That's just some pre-set up stuff that I did, again, that I thought looked pretty interesting, so I just added it in there as a quick go-to option. Alright, so let's turn these off for just a second. And then you're going to find there's just a background color in here, which is just a solid color picker. You're likely probably not going to want to use anything but black, so this effect shows up as it's supposed to, but it's there if you want to change it. Alright, so let's turn some options on and drop some subjects in and take a look at how this goes together. So, let's turn on our 1 hex here. And let's come up here. I've got a couple subjects at the top here. So let's just turn this guy on. So let's put him in this 1 hex version. So what I'm going to do is expand this. And I'm just going to drag and drop him into the subject group here. So let's drag him down and drop him right in the group. And we're going to see a few things happen here right off the bat. So one, let's expand here where we can grab our subject. You're going to find that the legs are getting automatically faded with the mask here. Alright, so that's going to fade out to the bottom, so we can position our subject wherever we think they look the best. So I think that looks pretty cool right there. The other thing that happens is there's this color cast that's getting applied if you want to make it feel like they're in the lighting environment that's going on. So this is just a solid color fill set to a soft light. So if you wanted it to be a little bit lighter with color, you could bring it up, the lightness up, or a little bit darker, a little less saturated, more saturated. So you can tweak this. You could even sample some of these background colors, you know, if you want to do that. So I think like something like that looks pretty cool right there. So again, just gives him a little bit of that color cast to make him feel like he's part of that environment, which I think looks really cool. Now within this group, we're also going to find, let's collapse the subject group, I have a global color change, okay? So the reason like the floor and the highlights don't have a color change is because when you turn this on, and there's one of these in each group, it's going to affect everything. So if I turn this on, even if my floor and the lighting's on, you can see all of that's picking up this global color change for the background. Alright, but there's a couple things we want to think about if we're using this global color change. So one, it's just another hue saturation adjustment layer. So you can move these sliders around to anything that you want. Or, again, use the color picker, which again we'll talk about in just a second. But right now, since we got the blue in the jersey and the blue background, I think we're good. But if this is on, you're going to want to change your subject color cast to match whatever you're working with in the background. So I would typically just sample like one of these light colors. And then let's maybe desaturate a little bit and darken a little bit. So again, that color cast, they're getting the color of the environment that they're in. So if you're creating a different color environment, be sure to change that color cast to match. And again, you can always play with the opacity on this. If it's too strong, just turn it up or down, or you know, a little bit based on what you want, or just turn it off completely. So that's really based on your preference. So I'm going to back out. Let's reset this to our blue, and I'm going to turn that color cast off for just a second. And so that's as easy as it is dropping a subject in. Then of course we would want to turn on our foreground smoke, and we'll leave it blue so that gives some atmosphere. Feels like he's kind of buried into that smoke. And then you could always turn our text on up here, and again, these are normal text layers, so they would just be double click if we wanted to change this, put the new name in and check mark to apply, and so that becomes super easy. Again, we could turn the year back on if you like that down there. And again, trying to make this very easy to use and fast. All right, so let's bring him up. Let's say instead of this single hex, we wanted to use the double. So let's turn this one off and this one on. So we would expand this. We've got our subject group within here. So let's go grab our subject out of this group. And let's drag him up to this group. All right, so this one's got a little bit of a different spin on it, in that this is set up to make him feel like he's kind of interwoven in between this bottom hexagon here. So he's kind of like standing behind it. So we got a couple extra layers in for this. So one, that's all being handled by the masking here. We can see if we disable this mask, he goes out in front of this. So that's being handled by the mask. We're still getting the legs to fade out of the bottom. But there's a couple layers here. One is this desaturation. So what this is doing is I'm adding a lighting effect to make it feel like this light is lighting their legs or whatever portion of their body is down here. So one, we want to desaturate that a little bit so it doesn't get oversaturated. And then the next is what's actually adding that glow. All right, so if you wanted to tweak or change those, that would be done with those two layers. Then we have the same color cast here. So we would just set this to what we like or sample a color. So that looks pretty good right about there. Click OK. And that gives us our color cast to make him feel like he matches that environment more. All right, so then in here, you're going to find in these bottom two, we also have some smoke that's in behind our subject in these groups. Again, just to create that sandwich type of atmosphere. There's our individual hexagons and our individual background smoke layer. So again, all that could be, if you just wanted the look of that without the background smoke, you could certainly do that by turning that smoke off. And same deal, we've got the global color change in this one, which could be turned on and set there properly, okay? All right, so let's take a look at the other two options here. So let's turn the 2x. So let's say we wanted to use the wall, and we wanted to do a full length. So let's turn our foreground smoke off. Let's go ahead and turn our floor options on. I'm going to use the double lighting on this one. And let's open this up. Open up our subject group. And let's grab this guy here and turn him on. I'm going to pull him down into here. All right, so let's position. I want to put him somewhere about right here where it looks like he's on the floor. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Maybe down just a hair. All right, so this is one. Let's change the background color and let's look at, matching that color. So now that he's positioned, let's look at changing the color of this one, matching things up, making him, we'll add a couple shadows on the feet here and things. So let's take a look here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just turn this color cast off for now. And I'm going to turn off the color grading layers for now. So I want to sample his jersey color. So what I want to do is I'm going to come grab our color picker tool, all right, which is right here. Okay, looks like the little eyedropper. And I'm going to come over, I'm going to sample this, just a red off his jersey, which is going to set our foreground color. So if I click on our foreground color, I can go ahead and copy this hex value out of here. So let's hit copy, and let's cancel this. And then what I want to do is I want to go to a site called the hslpicker.com. So it's very simple to use. All we're going to do is plug in that hex value here. So Command or Control V and paste that in. That sets our red, and then it gives our HSL values over here. So 352, 98, 37. So if we turn on our global color change, this would be 352. Let's see, what was that again? 98, 37. 98, 37. Now, one thing that I find is I like to tweak the lightness value of that. Okay, so that's the HSL value. But again, for this background, I'm actually just going to keep this nice and low. And I do like to watch the lightness. If you go too low, you could make these bars, just kind of go red like that. I like to do it when the center parts are still nice and white, and then you just start to get some glow outside. So I'm going to leave my lightness around +3. But that gives me my hue and saturation values to get that color, what we sampled from. But again, you could always, if you wanted to do it by eye, just by sliding these around, you know, by all means do that. But know that that tool exists if you're trying to get a specific color sampled. All right, so now that we've made this red, we can do a couple more things, which is to change our color cast of our subject. Let's turn this on, sample this color, and I'm going to pick one of these brighter reds back here, and I'm going to bring that over on that lightness scale just a little bit, maybe slightly darker. I think that looks pretty good right there. Let's add a couple of shadows right here so he feels more grounded. The way I'm going to do that is just come below the subject, and I'm going to add a blank layer. And I just paint these in personally, so I'll grab a black brush, and I'll leave my flow pretty low here, like 20-some%. And I'm just going to make the brush a little bit smaller, start at the back of the foot. Nice soft edge brush. And we're just going to let that shadow, I'm going to make it a little bit bigger and make that foot feels like it's, the shadow's kind of coming forward off the foot. Same thing on this side, just paint in, make the brush a little bit bigger, and bring that shadow forward again. Alright, that's really as simple it is as for grounding the feet in this. The other thing I do is just one more blank layer, and that's just to put a little soft shadow right up here to make it feel like his body's casting a little bit of shadow. And I might even turn the opacity down on that a little bit. So there we go. Simple as that for getting those feet grounded. That's all I do. You could turn the foreground smoke back on, and we could add some color to that if you wanted to make some feel like he's in that smoky atmosphere. That, you know, that definitely exists as an option. Let's turn the normal text off and the rotated text on, and that just to show you that look of, that's what it'd be like to place that text back within those hexagons. You know, we could grab these if we wanted to make them both up top and put them up here. So again, play around with whatever you like. Maybe you like it with no text at all. You're just doing like a senior image or something with no name. You could certainly do that just the same like that. And so that whole process would be exactly the same if we were using this small hex wall. I could just pull the subject and our shadow layers up into this subject group. Again, if we wanted not red, but we wanted to go with that default color, we could do that, and that's already preset and ready to go. And it's just as simple as moving him in there and getting that look. So hopefully you find that this is pretty straightforward and easy to use. I want to show you one last thing. That's with our, let's turn our color grading back on, of course. The facial highlight boost. So if you wanted to make the highlights on the face pop out a little bit, there's a couple layers. You can see one is the bottom one's for lighter skin, the upper one's for darker skin. We would just come to this mask, take a white brush, let's bring our flow up a little bit more, and just paint over the face there. And you're going to find it just draws a little bit more attention to their face. Now you could bring that opacity up and down to adjust it. This is also set up as a solid color fill. So if you wanted to add a little bit more skin tone or sample a skin tone, you could certainly do that and then play with how that highlight is showing on the face there. And then if we turn that off and on, you can see it just gives a little bit of kind of glow to those highlights on the face so that our attention stands out there more. Turn our text back on. And there you go. Should be pretty straightforward. One thing I would recommend lighting your subjects is to use a nice 3-point lighting, so light up front, a couple rim lights to create these edge lights, so when you drop them in front of a design like this, all of those lighting decisions make sense for placing them in front of there. But yeah, that's kind of a rough walkthrough of everything. You should be able to see all of the options and what's going on in each of these groups for these different pattern looks here. But yeah, hope you have great luck with this one, and I look forward to getting another one out there soon. See you guys later.